My name is Cindy Moss, and I grew up in the country. From my dad was the youngest of 19. My mom was the oldest of 15. They lived in farm communities, and I was raised knowing that education was the way for me to be able to go out in the world and make the world a better place. And I studied science in college because science was always my favorite thing. You get to touch things, you get to work with other people. I got a master's in science teaching from Syracuse University in New York. And then I earned my doctorate in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math from Curtin Institute of Technology in Perth, Western Australia, where we had 400 doctoral students from all over the world. So I love connecting with people and making these global connections because that's how we're going to change the world. And where I live now, we live on a lake. It's starting to be summer. It's fairly warm. It's going to be 80 degrees today. And we have a boat. We like to go out on the water. And we just came back from a week at the ocean about 4 hours away where we spent time, saw dolphins and other kinds of animals and just had fun with our friends.
Hello, ma'am. Good morning. My name is Padmaja. I am a seventh grader from Z.P.H.S Ilavaram. Now, I would like to ask you a question. Can I ask, ma'am?
Yes.
How did you handle classroom disruptions or behavioral challenges?
Well, for 20 years, I was a high school teacher, and high school in the U.S., students are 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. And I taught primarily biology. And I rarely had discipline problems because we made everything fun. I was the singing science teacher, so all of our notes were in song. So instead of taking notes, we would sing like, there's a chemical in the nucleus that replicates during the stage called interphase. It's called deoxyribonucleic acid, you see. That's what it's all about. And so we sang, we colored pictures, we did things with our hands. And so even students who caused problems in other classes didn't cause problems in my class because they were having fun and they could be successful.
Can you provide an example of lab experiment that effectively engaged your students?
Yes. And for the way that I taught, I ended up winning something called the Milken National Educator Award. It's one of the top teachers in our country. And they gave me $25,000 that I used to finish my doctorate. And then I spent 10 years working for Discovery, like Discovery Channel in education. And so, as you were saying, Hare Krishna, I was in 40 countries and 48 states. So I've helped people around the globe figure out how to teach this way, because brain research shows when you're having fun, you learn faster, you learn deeper, and it matters more to people. And the kinds of labs that I did, I like to do labs that lasted more than one class. Most of our classes were either an hour to an hour and a half. And so a lot of my labs would happen over a whole week. One of my favorites is students would be in groups of 4. They would each get a plant and we watered the plants. They gave them the same amount of plant. The plants looked alike. They had flowers on them. One plant went in a cabinet, so it was dark. One plant, we put a plastic bag on the top of it. One just sat on the table and one sat in front of a fan. And every day for a week, when they came to class, they would weigh their plant to see if it weighed more, if it weighed less. And they made predictions. They tried to figure out what was going on. And what they found is with transpiration, losing water, the plant would lose weight. And so the one with the bag on it that kept the water in didn't lose weight. It made them question why that happened. And then we went into all the parts of the leaf. We went into what is transpiration, why is it important? But I like to start with hands-on, where kids generate some questions. They have a moment where they're like, what's going on? Why is this happening? So they have a reason to learn. And so that's how we did something hands-on every single day in class and used that to make them want to read and look at the math that went into explaining what they saw.
Okay, thank you so much. Dr. Moss, I have one question actually. So when it comes to the biology, there are so many interesting experiments you can try with the students. So as per my knowledge, when I was at school, one of my biological teachers has dissected a frog and showed the parts of the frog. So which in fact has had a great impact on my young mind at the time. So still those images are as fresh as today. So biological teacher has that much advantage to explain many interesting facts. So as a biological teacher, a biology teacher, and what would you say to the current generation of the teachers who are just stepping into the profession of biology as a new professionals? What would you suggest to them?
I would say to all teachers, no matter whether they're teaching kindergarten, first grade, all the way through high school math, the more hands-on you can do, the better. I mean, you remember touching that frog. And yes, in my class, we dissected worms and frogs and pigs and cow eyes and cats. We dissected all kinds of things, but it's all about touching. The brain research says when you touch things, about 40% of your brain is engaged. That's the most it will ever be. So no matter whether you're teaching math, whether you're teaching history, whether you're teaching biology, the more you can do hands-on, the more your students will learn, the more they'll remember. And I haven't had students now in like 23 years, at least once a month in an airport, I will see a former student somewhere in the world who comes up behind me and they sing a song. And yes, they do remember the labs, but if you think about when we're growing up, in the US anyway, we learn our alphabet by singing, like A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And if you ask people even old to say the alphabet, that's what they do. The brain research says some of our first abilities to learn come from touching and music, and it's some of the last to go. So even though, yes, we did lots of really cool labs, I took my students on great field trips, they really remember the songs more than the hands-on. But in the hands-on, they were developing the relationships with their fellow students and figuring out the kinds of things they like to do. So it's very important.
Thank you so much. You have mastered an art of teaching any lesson in the form of songs. So
Yes.
that is quite appealing to the students. How did you learn this art of teaching any lesson in the form of songs? Because it's quite unusual for me to witness a teacher like you.
Yes. It just came from the way I grew up. In the summer, I would go to church camp and we sang songs all the time wherever we were. We're like, we're here because we're here, because we're here, because we're here, like silly little things. But I knew how like it just made everybody smile. When music is playing, kids love music. They love to make rhythm, they love to move. And so it just made sense that that's how God made our brains to work. If I really wanted them to learn, that's what I should do. And I also, my grandmother, my mom's mom, was in a nursing home and she was probably 92, 93. We weren't sure exactly because she had lied about her age. She had 15 kids. She lied about her age. She'd been the same age on 5 of the birth certificates. So we knew something wasn't right. But grandma, most of the time she didn't know who she was, who we were, where she was. But I could sit down at the piano and play hymns from church and she would know 3, 4, 5 verses, all the words. And so early on as a kid, it hit me that music was a way to make sure that learning lasted. And so that just impacted me. No one in my education taught me to use songs. It was just something that I developed on my own.
So
My name is Z.P.H.S I am 7th grader from Z.P.H.S School, Ilavaram. I would like to ask you one question, ma'am. Shall I ask?
Yes, please.
Could you please share your current roles as a keynote speaker?
Yes. The last 13 years, I've worked for a company. I've worked for Discovery Education, and I would do keynotes. I would provide learning for teachers and principals, help other educators who want to teach like me. I would help them figure that out. As a keynote speaker, I tell people I'm the STEM inspiration. I'm all about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And for me, it really means students and teachers energizing minds. It's about teaching young people like you how to solve the problems they're going to encounter. And so in my keynotes, what I do is I try to get people excited so that educators remember why they want to be a teacher in the first place. Like we all want to be teachers because we care about kids like you guys. We want to see you figure out how to move forward. We want to see you be on fire to make the world a better place. And so as adults, though, sometimes you get bogged down in work and it becomes a job and not fun anymore. And so as a keynote speaker, I try to help them remember that we need to put the fun in fundamentals, that it's okay to smile and laugh and be happy. And the happier they are in their job, the better educator they're going to be. And so as a keynote speaker, as I said before, I've been in 40 countries and 48 states. And now I have my own company. I've kind of retired from working from somebody else. And so I'm just helping people wherever they are. At some point, I'd love to come to India and maybe meet you guys in person. And because I tell people, when I speak to you, if you don't leave on fire, then your wood was wet when you came in, because I can typically get people all fired up and ready to go and help them remember that teaching is the most amazing profession, because we get to touch the future and we get to work with amazing young people like you guys.
Yes, thank you so much. And you have just told us that you have been to as many as 40 countries to train the teachers. So how many continents you have completed?
I haven't been on Antarctica, but I've been on all the other continents.
Oh,
So I'm trying to figure out how I can take a trip there.
so you are most welcome to India.
Yes, and I have not been to India, so I would love to at some point come and maybe meet with you guys. I've done the most work in Thailand because they were working to improve their scores on the PISA, the international test. And so I went to help them figure out how to do more hands-on and how to get all the kids excited and engaged.
Okay. So out of these 40 countries experience, so which country you think is so memorable to you throughout your life? Because teacher is someone who always gains the experience almost every day. Some memories are maybe slowly fades out of our mind. Some memories still there until we breathe our last. So could you please share some of your memories associated with the countries and their training
Yeah.
sessions?
When I was in college, I was on a really cool scholarship that sent me someplace every summer to make me a well-rounded leader of tomorrow. And after my senior year, I could go anywhere in the world I want to go. So I went to a travel agent and said, where's the most expensive place in the world to go? Because somebody else was paying for it. So I went to China and Japan and studied acupuncture. And I got to spend 2 months in China and Japan. In Japan, I stayed with families and got to know them. And so spending that much time in Japan and in China, in both of those Asian countries, I will never, ever forget, because I was with the families. I got to eat meals with them, see how they lived, spend time with their children, learn to speak some of the language, travel on their public transportation, and experience what their lives were like. Most of the time, when you visit a country, you don't get that kind of experience. And so getting the experience to stay with people, and I've stayed friends with many of them, and we just communicate and we'll Zoom. But I feel like the more you travel, the more you expand your mind, the more you realize as humans, we're a lot more alike than different. And the only way we're going to solve the problems that we've created in this world is to work together. So I feel really passionate about people traveling as much as possible, because education and travel change you, and no one can ever take that away from you.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, ma'am. Good morning. My name is Farhat Tawassul. I am studying 7th grade from Z.P.H.S School, Ilavaram. Now, I would like to ask a question. Can I ask, ma'am?
Yes.
Why did you choose to become a biology teacher?
I didn't set out to be a teacher. I started out thinking I wanted to be a doctor. And after I have a BS, an undergrad degree in zoology, and did not get into medical school the first time that I applied. And so I spent a year working in a research lab at the medical school. And once I saw what was happening to the medical students, the way their life was, I decided that was not for me. And I knew I liked working with kids because I have 300 first cousins. I always had lots of kids around me. And so I went back to school to be a teacher and never regretted it. And I chose biology because it was my favorite subject in high school, because I had a really good teacher who let us do lots of hands-on. And I knew, as you had said, Hare Krishna, that I had an advantage as a biology teacher. If you can't make biology matter to kids, you can't make anything matter to kids. And I felt like I could make a difference. I could give them knowledge that would stay with them the rest of their life. And if I were going to work hard, I wanted to do something that really mattered. And I do feel like being an educator is the best profession, because all the other professions come from the work that we do. So I do not regret it at all. And I would be very excited if any of you young people decided you wanted to be teachers, because when we teach, we touch the future, and that's how we change the world.
Okay, thank you so much. So out of these 40 countries experience, which country's education system you think is so competitive and your favorite one?
I think the Scandinavian countries have some of the best education. There's good points about almost every country and things they need to work on, but in Scandinavia, I feel like they really focus on the right things. They don't have sports as part of school, and kids all go home for lunch. Like they create a whole community around the students. Everybody's getting exercise because they typically walk or ride their bike to school, so they're getting lots of exercise. They pay the parents to stay home when they have kids so they can take care of them. They educate the parents. And the kids, they're not in school as long as we are in the US. In the US, kids are in school almost 40 hours a week. In Scandinavia, it's only about 20 hours a week. But the kids learn about fewer things, but they learn deeper. And I feel like it matters more to the kids versus in the US and many other places. Kids go to school just to keep them off the streets. And in Scandinavia, I think they really are focusing on the skills the kids need so they can have a good job and be good citizens as they go forward.
How did you adopt your teaching methods to accommodate diverse learning styles in your classroom? That's our question.
Okay. I honestly, I didn't have to make a lot of accommodations. My doctoral research, I wanted to see which factors in the learning environment would lead to higher test scores on our high stakes test. And I took the students that struggled the most. They were high school students reading at the level of like an 8-year-old and worked with them. And originally I thought that boys might want something different than girls, that the Black students might want something different than the brown students, than the Mexican students, than the white students. But what I found is all the students needed, I gave them surveys and asked them what they wanted. And the 3 things that mattered most to all of the students was they needed to do hands-on, they wanted to work in a group so they could help one another, and they needed to know that the teacher believed in them. And so I didn't have to give them, I would give them choices as they were doing different things. If they dissected a frog, they could write a paper about it. They could make a PowerPoint. They could write a song about it. I would give them choices of how to prove to me that they'd mastered what they needed to learn. And so I think that took care of it, but I didn't have to adapt otherwise. I just tried to give students lots of choices because my ultimate goal was for them all to be successful, and they knew that that's what I really wanted. And so they would find a way that worked for them and they would help one another be successful.
Okay, thank you so much. I can't actually contain my excitement from requesting you to give a little demo to my students, especially in teaching NS or biological science, just 1 or 2 minutes in the form of song.
Let's see. Ecology, 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 ecology is the study of relationships between the physical environment and the organisms living there. Each life form has a job that determines its structure, and we call that job its niche, you see. If another life form comes along to challenge it, competition will begin to be. Ecology, ecology. And so that's what we would do instead of taking notes, is we would sing our songs, we would color a picture about it, and then we would do some kind of lab.
Wow, to my students, a message, your valuable message to my students.
Okay. I would say you can't be what you can't see. So spend some time, you guys, the grades that you're in between now and when you go to college, learning about different careers that are out there, because as you grow, there's so many amazing jobs and careers that don't exist right now. So be open to learning about all the things that are out there, because there's some job out there that will fit you and use all of your talents so that you can go forward and help as many people as possible in your life. And so don't think about what do you want to be when you grow up. Think about what kind of problems do you want to solve, and then figure out a way to create a portfolio that's evidence of the kind of problem solver that you are. That's what your future employers will want to see.
Thank you.